Well, that wasn't so bad on Saturday after all. Wisconsin falls 21-7 at sixth-ranked Oregon in a game many of us thought was going to get out of hand early. Actually ended up being a four-quarter ball game. Wisconsin obviously never felt like a threat to win that one, but all things considered, it feels like a positive performance for the Badgers.
I would say that from a competitive standpoint, the way that you compete on the field, that's the best that we have seen. That's the best fight that we've seen from Wisconsin. From an offense, defense, special teams standpoint, just now offense, we scored a touchdown. Now that's not saying a whole lot. The bar is not very high for the offense to show some better fight than what they've had in the last couple games. But all in all, I mean, you keep within 14 against Oregon in Eugene. You give yourself a chance. Now there's still plenty to correct, plenty to do, and plenty to make strides to even be competitive in that realm again of winning the ball game. But that is a step in the right direction yesterday.
So let's start with this. Tim Brando, the commentator at the game, obviously well known, was doing some real heavy lifting for Luke Fickell and pushing the propaganda hard throughout that 60 minutes, going to bat for Luke Fickell, fine, whatever. My head popped up a little bit when he started talking about all these podcasters don't know anything. And I thought for sure he was going to come after you or me for something we said, and attacked somebody for a take apparently on the relationship with the high school coaches in the state of Wisconsin. I haven't seen the clip. I haven't seen the episode, but all my mentions were saying it was Brad Nortman, former Wisconsin punter, who's now at ESPN. A couple thoughts on that. I highly doubt this came from Tim Brando. I mean, usually these guys have production meetings with the staff. Someone, I don't know if it was Luke Fickell, but somebody told him about whatever clip's been floating around because Brando took a shot at that person. It just doesn't strike me as a program, when stuff like this happens, it just doesn't strike me as a program where, things are going well, because now this is another notable alumni that, apparently you're trying to piss off here. And you're clearly listening to whatever's being said. And when Tim Brando says something, along the lines of, what do these guys actually know? Well, there's been a lot of articles written about this where the high school coaches too have, I don't know if they've put their names on it necessarily or spoken anonymously, but they flat out said and discussed the lack of a relationship with Wisconsin among all these in-state high school programs. But were you worried at all that you were going to get called out on national TV? Because for a second, my heart kind of dropped a little bit that he was going to say something about something we said in the past couple of weeks.
Hey, I was ready to defend myself and defend us, because if we really need to, I can call one of my buddies in that locker room right now and talk about what's really going on. So I'm not too worried about, somebody taking our credibility away when we have direct relationships in the locker room, to be able to get what's really going on, information. I mean, what's really real and what's not. I mean, I wasn't worried about taking any shots. I mean, I've been in the locker room, so it's fine. I could take it.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Tim Brando also said Dylan Jones is out for the season and Danny O'Neal's hurt. So to maybe clap back at him, what does he actually know? Because that was two wrong reportings right there, in the first half alone. But let's look at the game itself. You mentioned the best fight Wisconsin's shown all season. I'm not going to get caught jumping on the bandwagon. We've talked about it time and time again. Moral victories don't mean anything anymore. Nobody cares at this point. It's still 6 straight losses. It's still 11 straight losses to Power 4 competition. But if there was a reason to believe that this is the turning point in the Fickell era, I thought a lot of good signs came on defense, obviously, and in the run game. I mean, this was not Michigan a couple weeks ago. It was not Oregon or Penn State last season, or even Ohio State in 2023, in the sense that it felt like Wisconsin took the fight to Oregon. Defensively, I saw a unit that was finally beating blocks at a high rate. I saw 11 guys flying around to the football, looking to create havoc. And I felt like they controlled that game against what is a top 10, top 15 Oregon offense nationally. On the flip side, I know the rushing numbers weren't great, but this is an offensive line that continues to get better. The context here is also important when you look at the total rush yards, which was like 110. Obviously, Gideon Atuka, the redshirt freshman, had the best day of a Badger tailback all season. And you're going up against an Oregon run defense that was top 5 nationally coming in. They also know you cannot pass the ball, so they're stacking the box, doing everything they can to make Hunter Simmons beat them. And you still had a pretty good day on the ground, all things considered, with the wind and the rain. Again, nobody should be excited. I don't think this is a very good football team, but like I said, if we're willing to come down, or if we're going to come down harshly on this program, we've got to be able to pat them on the back as well. And like I said, for the first time, I felt like Wisconsin actually, sort of dictated and took the fight to an opposing team, rather than just kind of letting the other team sort of have their way with them and more or less hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about last week how Wisconsin's mentality should be to make Oregon respect your play, and I think a ton of guys did that last night. And the way that they ran to the ball, the way that they attacked the ball, the way that they finished on the ball carrier, from a defensive standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, I really thought that the front really applied some pressure. I mean, they were creating some movement, and I know that the passing game is just not there right now. I don't know if the weather would have really affected the pass game or not, um, but the weather did limit that naturally as well. So just being realistic as well with that, I mean, there was some competing, there was some like we said, some fight. But when you have those things and finding those things in October, it is a little late to start really get rolling, right? So being able to carry this now into the last bit of the season is super important. And I think there's just something missing to where they can get over this hump to actually make this a competitive game to even win these games. But I think coming into Eugene and doing what they did in these conditions, I mean, that's probably the best case scenario that we could have besides them actually winning the ball game.
4 sacks, season high, 7 tackles for loss. I know Oregon lost their starting quarterback, Dante Moore, but he wasn't exactly lighting it up. But before that point, 9 of 15, under 100 yards passing. Maybe he changes some things and they get another touchdown. Obviously, the wind and the rain probably limited Oregon offensively and what they wanted to do. But yeah, I'm not going to take away from what Wisconsin's defense did, all things considered. You mentioned trying to build off this, because this is something Wisconsin hasn't been able to do under Luke Fickell, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not going to be Charlie Brown and go up to kick the football only to have Lucy pull it out from under me again. All those games I mentioned in the past, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, what has happened next has been extremely troubling, and we saw it last year against this Oregon team where Wisconsin gave the number 1 team in the country all they could handle, and the Ducks eked their way out of Madison with a last-second field goal, only to have all the life, all the energy sucked out of the program, and then they get steamrolled the rest of November. My question to you would be just how hard do you think it is? Obviously, there's a bye week in here, which is probably going to help, because you don't have to get up next Saturday and play a football game knowing you have to hold Washington to 3 points to probably win that game. But my question to you would be, how difficult do you think it is for this team to continue to fight like this when they're not getting the results? They poured everything they had into this Oregon game, only to lose by 2 touchdowns. How hard is it just to keep going at this point in the season when you're not being rewarded?
It's hard. It's hard when you get numb, like we've talked about before, getting numb to losing, but also the grind throughout the season. It's hard enough whether you're winning or not. I mean, showing up every single day, really by this time of the year, your body really feels deteriorating, in a lot of ways. And, you're having, some nicks and some bruises, and you're really just trying to fight just to be healthy enough to practice if you play a lot of snaps. And so when you're losing on top of that, that makes that internal motivation a lot more difficult as well, because now, like, what are you really playing for besides your brothers and really loving football? Well, you really need to hold on to playing for the love of your brothers. And because football is not as fun when you're trying to just get healthy enough to practice. And it hurts to get out of bed and it hurts to get to the facility. That's where that mental motivation really has to kick in. And, so that's where you really got to rely on your locker room and your boys to get you up and get you rolling for just another day and another week in the routine. So it's tough. It's tough. And this season does not get any easier. They've had a really tough last 3 weeks or so. And then now having a bye week, I think, is going to help a lot for these next, this final push to the end of the season, because, these opponents aren't, they're not getting any worse, and Washington's getting better.
So I think the line ended up dropping down to 31, and that looked about as safe as ever. Even the Wisconsin team total, which was at 6.5, after we saw that injury report, which was loaded with names. Christian Allegro, obviously, we knew good chance he probably wouldn't play with that broken arm, but there were a lot of starters and key players out, and even a lot of new names that we hadn't seen on the injury report all season pop up. When it's that deep, and you obviously don't want to infer anything here because we just don't know at this point, but it was surprising with the amount of names on there for Wisconsin to play as well as they did. And you're coming obviously at a point in the season where, if you're head coach Luke Fickell, you're trying to figure out who's in, who's out, who's going to buy into this program even when things aren't going well. I mean, is there anything to read into that, just in terms of not only the names on the injury report, but maybe some guys that normally see action but didn't on Saturday?
Yeah, the injury report can show actual injuries at times, and then sometimes, maybe and I'm not saying anybody on there has off the field issues, but that is a good way to hide if something's going on off the field for some of these kids that, they might be suspended or something like that. Sometimes they get put on the injury report. And I'm not saying any of these kids got suspended, but that long of a list is pretty surprising. But also, if these injuries are real, then you have to go and you got to look at your strength and conditioning program throughout the season, because that is a huge part in your development as the season goes on, with how you lift, how you recover your body, how you keep your strength, because you're not going to technically get stronger during the season. Your body hurts. You have all these injuries that you kind of have to maintain strength with, or you have to, focus more on just to stay healthy to get ready for the next week. Now, if you have all these injuries going on, you got to go and you got to look in the mirror on what's going on in that weight room throughout the week. Because if it's breaking down these guys' bodies even more, then that's another issue going on besides just the X's and O's and the locker room, the culture, whatever it might be. That's a whole nother issue that you got to look into, because that's a long injury list. And I'm not saying that, again, somebody was suspended or not on that, but if these are all injuries, you got to go look at your strength and conditioning program in season, see what the heck is going on.
I don't know what you've heard on it, but some players have talked openly, and I've heard various things. I don't know if there's any huge complaints about the strength and conditioning program and the off-season regimen, but one thing that's consistently brought up is, especially from the guys that were holdovers from the Paul Chryst regime, is it is a lot more intense than it was under Paul Chryst. What were you guys just doing that maybe helped keep you guys fresh or injury free? And I don't know if you've heard anything from the players that are there now about maybe what they're having to adjust to, just going through what seems like two different ideologies there.
I mean, speaking from my experience during the Chryst era, I mean, Coach Snee and Coach Kalaji both had those guys as strength coaches, and they were both phenomenal, as well as their assistants. But our routine during the season was, you get a lift on Sunday after the game. Usually it's a flush. I mean, and if you have a certain amount of reps that you hit, I mean, this is kind of the level of intensity that you should have for your lift the next day. Now, if you didn't play that many plays during that, then you're aimed for a more intense lift because your body feels better
Yeah.
naturally, right? So it was kind of divided out that way. And then early on in the week, you hit your meteor lift on Monday or Tuesday. And then Wednesday, you get one more lift in. And then by Thursday and Friday, you're really just making sure that if you want to get something in or something quick or sweat or just to work on your mobility, recovery, that's kind of more what we were focusing on as the week went on. But the intensity just went lower and lower and lower as we got closer to game day, which makes sense. So your body can feel good and be ready to go. But they also offered some great resources, and they were very understanding with how we felt, and going into the lift. So if I went up to Coach D and said, "Coach, my right shoulder today is just killing me. I mean, I can't even lift it up, above my head or whatever it might be," then he would make sure that we would just adjust to the lift how needed to maintain the strength and to get and make sure your shoulder feels healthy. So they were very understanding and very flexible with how they trained you, which I loved because all of us always felt good going into game day. Now I hear some other things, from this new staff that, it's a lift till failure. Everything is lift till failure. Everything is maximum intensity. And doing that in season, I'm no strength coach, but doing that in season, I know as a player, that would completely break down my body, is especially coming in after a game and I can barely walk from playing and they want me to go max intensity and go till failure. Well, I tell you what, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be many reps till I would fail on that weight. So, it's about getting your body back and ready to go to play the next game. It's not always about getting stronger in the weight room. It's about getting on the field and how you feel on the field. So
You're just mad you never got to take part in Squat Fest. Just say it. Just call it like it is.
yeah, a lot of jealousy there. A lot of jealousy. I missed out on that.
Back to the game here. Wisconsin, not a secret, has a huge quarterback problem. Billy Edwards still doesn't look like he's going to return anytime soon. Head coach Luke Fickell continues to insinuate that Danny O'Neil is part of the plan going forward. It's a couple weeks in a row now. He said that after the game, but O'Neil hasn't gotten, I don't think he took any snaps yesterday. I know in the past couple games he's gone out there for some read option stuff very sparingly, but Hunter Simmons, 7 of 21, 86 yards, had the touchdown late and the interception to seal the win for Oregon. Starts 1 of 12. I'll give him this. He had the brilliant move when you can't complete a pass. You fumble that thing forward ahead of the sticks and have your lineman pick it up for a first down. I mean, Oregon's out there playing chess or checkers, and he's out there playing chess. I'll give him that on that one. But again, I don't want to pile on him too much just because this is not his fault in the grand scheme of things. We're in the third year of the Luke Fickell era, and this is the roster that's been constructed. He was still the third string quarterback going into the season. He should not feel the weight of the offense on his shoulders, especially with this schedule. But what are you just maybe seeing from the passing game in terms of Wisconsin's ability to help him out right now? And it just feels like they did do a lot of rollouts and get him out of the pocket so he doesn't have to stare into and throw over an offensive line. But, is there anything else you think they could do just to take this weight off his shoulders and really just complete forward passes consistently at some point?
I mean, the best game that he had was against Michigan when we were just getting
Yeah.
the ball out, getting the ball out, getting the ball out. We weren't giving Michigan a single chance to get after the quarterback. Now, I want to really look into how they're developing and what the coaching is like because we saw it yesterday. I mean, there was a sprint out pass and he had the tight end for a dump off and the timing was so late to where it was now a questionable catch on whether it was even
Yeah.
completed or not by the time the tight end got to the sideline. Timing and even just in the big moments on third and fourth and short under center, not being able to collect the snap under center. I know he has to execute these things, but also what are we doing to make sure that like these issues are taken care of? I mean, I think as a coach, you want to develop a third string quarterback like this to make sure that even these tiny details are just dialed in. because at least from a coaching standpoint, what I can control are the fundamentals and the basics for this kid. And if I can make sure that he's doing these correctly, then we can build off of that and we can get a little bit more flexible with our play calling and what he can do for us. But if we can't even get the fundamentals right, then we got nowhere to go, nowhere to build off of. And that's how I feel with Hunter Simmons right now is I don't know where the development is with him with his fundamentals. And it's what is it, his third or fourth game now? So I wish that they could dial that in a little bit more for him. And then let's get back to a game plan like what they did with Michigan, where we're just getting the ball out quick, and then let's see if we can balance that out in the run game.
I'm glad you brought up that because I said that during the game. I know exactly what throw you're talking about because Mason was wide open from the jump and he just never threw the ball till he got on the sidelines there. And there was another one where he's on the run throwing a little bit across his body to the second level into multiple defenders. And I'm just like, what about the season you've had so far makes you feel like you should throw that football? And it did it kept looking like he, instead of taking what was available, was trying to get greedy and maybe push the ball downfield. And like you said, you'd have to imagine that's coached into him at some point because a guy in his position with the very limited amount of success he's had so far at this level, you'd think he'd be, he'd feel fantastic about having a 6 or 7 yard option wide open right in front of him there to just take and get on to the next snap, but he didn't. So the quarterback situation, a lot of people want to see the true freshman Carter Smith, and normally I'm not one to advocate for playing a true freshman in this spot, especially if they're not ready. And based on what I've seen saw at fall camp a couple months ago, he was not ready. He was not close. At the same time, you're sort of in this situation of what do you have to lose? Luke Fickell did a lot of talking about the future yesterday in his post-game press conference. Well, this is a guy you thought was your quarterback of the future. I don't know if they feel any differently after a couple months of practice with him. I hear it a lot. I don't know if I've ever seen it, but sort of the adage is you can ruin a young quarterback by playing him too early. I don't know if you have any experience or thoughts on this, but what would be your mindset at this point of the season of rolling out a true freshman, and even if it's just for a series or two to get his feet wet, get him comfortable, as long as you don't burn that red shirt and go over the 4-game limit, just to maybe see what you've got here and maybe complement this run game in any way at all?
I mean, scoring one touchdown in 12 quarters, I don't see anything wrong with putting another quarterback out there and a young kid to see just what he's got, but also give him some experience, like you said, getting his feet wet a little bit and the speed of the game, the system, the checks, seeing things differently on the field from what the defense is going to give you. All that stuff is valuable. And what's the worst that can happen? Not score any points, because that's what we've been doing. So I don't think that there's really a big risk in that, and being able to give him the experience possibly that you can build off of for the future, or just seeing just where he's at in his development. I mean, I think this could be a great time to help develop your kids when you're not putting up points and having the success that you're having with what you've already been trying. Why not try something different and helping your kids develop? So I don't see anything wrong with it.
The couple young kids are getting a shot. We talked about Gideon Atuka. Those linebackers yesterday, Mason Posa, 13 tackles, Cooper Catalano, 8 tackles, both had a pass breakup. I felt like I was watching, linebackers in a Jim Leonard, Dave Aranda, Justin Wilcox defense for a second, the way those guys were playing with their hair on fire. Listen, we're in the transfer portal era. I'm not suggesting I know anything because I don't, but, we know what happens during an off season. And it's one of the reasons why so many people get turned off to a sport. It's because you can't wrap your arms around these kids anymore and start thinking about 2026, 2027, because there are no guarantees, especially at this program with where they're at in the head coaching situation right now. But I gotta believe a lot of people, yourself included, feel like there's a very bright future for these two in Madison if they stick around.
They're great fit for the Wisconsin program and the history of what this program's been. Those type of guys, great size, just kind of the nasty mentality, a little bit of a screw loose, and they're clearly hungry. I mean, that's what's the good part about playing young guys a lot of the time is they've never played college football before. So of course they're going to be screaming to the ball. They're going to be trying to make plays. They may be trying to do too much because of how excited they are and their lack of experience of being out there, but that comes with it. That comes with improving is making those mistakes at a young age and getting that experience. But those guys can be a great fit for this program for a long time. And I hope that they stick around. I hope that they can see their value of what they can bring to Wisconsin football. And, I know the Wisconsin fans would love to have these guys around for their careers here. And, that's the crazy thing in this day and age. You just hope that they stay.
Yeah. I wonder what maybe some of the older guys are thinking right now who maybe don't play as much or, maybe just saw their roles go down because of what these two did. And, I couldn't help but think, you got two true freshmen who probably don't know the playbook yet. Like you said, they're probably doing a lot of guessing and doing too much. But here these two are playing maybe as hard as anybody we've seen all season, with the exception of, I think of Ben Barton, Aaron Witt, some of those just blue collar guys that have been in the program for a while now. But you see two true freshmen come in like that and sort of just spark the entire team and do things that we haven't seen this defense do all season. I don't know. It's kind of a red flag for me, just, with maybe what's going on this season. It's like, why are these two doing it? And you're not getting it from guys who have been around the block, guys who are seeing their career kind of go down the drain here. Why is it these two that have to do it?
That's a good question. I mean, these guys clearly gave a different energy last night of this defense and of those positions just from, I think, just the young juice and flying around to the football. And, who knows? I mean, some of these kids that were playing before them, they might have been playing through injuries. They might have been just holding on for dear life just to see the field each week. Or, maybe they're not having their best year, right? Like they just don't have it. You don't know exactly what's going on that could affect the difference in these young guys coming in and playing. But I mean, I think it's great because especially when you have 2 wins from the season, nobody's job should be safe. And these players should
Yeah.
understand that. And if not, then leadership should be discussing that in the locker room, saying, "Hey guys, everybody's spot is open. Go and get it because we got to figure out a different way to bring some juice and compete each Saturday." So I think it's great to have young guys out there and kind of applying some pressure. And when they play that well, it'll force these older guys to kind of step it up and force them to get better. And that's how the team gets better. So I think it's great and it's healthy for the program. And I hope we have some more guys just kind of applying that pressure to push the older guys to continue to improve.
Like I said in the opening, thought this was going to be a runaway blowout win for Oregon. The first play, it looked like things were going to get ugly.
Oh man.
That onside kick, they recover, and you just can't help but laugh at that point. Obviously, Wisconsin's defense made a heck of a statement, back-to-back drives where they get sacks to end those series from Oregon. One of which was obviously that crazy sudden change there. But Oregon starting the game with an onside kick, is that an indicator of how little they thought of this Wisconsin team to do that right then and there, knowing they could probably win the game without any type of trickery, or they could probably play it straight up, try and avoid injuries at all costs to win the game. But for them to say, we're really not worried about you scoring, but let's give it a shot. I mean, do you take that as a sign of disrespect at all?
Naturally, everybody wants to see it that way. And I think Dan Lanning, from just following him from afar, he's that type of guy that's going to set the tone, going to find a way for his team to get some energy. And maybe that was part of it. I was like, this is going to create some intensity and a fire for our team. But also from a schematic standpoint, you don't just randomly choose to kick an onside kick if you don't have the look, because it's a big risk, right? So I'm sure that they're
Right.
watching film, which I would love to break this down on an actual, Exos Thundercloud and see where the holes were. But they saw something throughout the week of, hey, if they give us this look, there's probably a hole right here. And if we see that look, we're going to check to an onside and we're going to go after it. That's usually what happens during the week of prep and how these onside kicks happen that aren't needed or necessary. So they must have saw that hole of what they were looking at throughout the week, and they had a game plan for it, and they checked right to it, and it worked. So that needs to be a red flag for Wisconsin special teams, though, of like, hey, where are our holes? Where can they hurt us? That's not only on kickoff return, but anywhere. Where can the defense hurt us? Where can the offense hurt us right now with our scheme? That's a huge part in development too during the season, is making sure that coaches see the holes in these schemes.
We obviously have to talk about what happened at the end of the first half too, because Luke Fickell was clearly frustrated by the offense and inability to score. And once again, he passes on an opportunity at points, and up through three quarters, it was your best opportunity. I should say second best opportunity at points. Wisconsin's down 7-0. They get the ball out to the 44-yard line, 43 seconds on the clock. They have two timeouts. I guess technically you're one throw away from being in field goal range and making it a 7-3 game. Again, conditions not great. Also, they could not pass the ball at the time. I understand that. But earlier in the day, I'm watching Purdue, who's already got a couple wins on the season. They're at home. They go for it on fourth down early in the game, deep in their own territory. No hesitation about it. Again, I understand you can't throw the ball. So what? I mean, I just don't feel like this is getting respect from fans, boosters, media, whoever. And maybe you don't care. And I guess on some level you shouldn't. But you're damn sure not trying to win a football game, which last time I checked was the most important thing. The only other alternative in that moment is to just lie down, which is what they did.
This has become a recurring topic every single week on the
Yeah.
show, talking about Fickell's ability to control the clock, his ability to take risks to score points, his ability to try something different when he has nothing to lose. This has happened week after week. And at some point, are we finally going to question his competitive spirit? I mean, this is getting to a point where you literally have nothing to lose. Your job is either on the line. I don't know if you talked to Chris McIntosh, but your job is either on the line this year, or you know that you have the job next year and you just don't care. It doesn't make any sense. And it's a bad look on how you look to your players when you're trying to get them to compete their tails off to win games, and you're not even giving them a shot from your control to try to go and at least put up some points and have some juice. So it's a recurring thing every single week. It's ridiculous. And it's at this point, I've gotten to the point to say, yes, he's not trying to take the risk to remotely even spark something up when you have to take some risk at this point when you're not putting up any points. He just doesn't want to do it, because this is the third or fourth time that we've talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, go hurry up and hand the ball to Gideon Atuka, and at least give people the idea you're trying. Or if you don't trust Hunter Simmons that much, I mean, there are other things you could do to potentially get yourself in field goal range there and make it I mean, obviously it stays a one score game or potentially a tie game, but again, you're 2-5. You haven't at that point you hadn't scored in 10 quarters. Just putting my coaching hat on here, I'd have to wonder too. I have a quarterback that's suffering right now. What does this say to him, to a guy that I need to get some confidence into, but my actions tell me I don't trust you to make one or two throws at a point where we could really use it. I'd rather just go back to the locker room with my tail between my legs.
Yeah, again, it just goes back to the message that he gives off to his players when he does things like this. lack of trust, not wanting to scratch and claw for some points and to take some risks to stay in ball games. And imagine if they did drive down, they did kick a field goal or something happened and they ended up scoring a touchdown. That's a whole different mentality when you go back in the locker room. You're like, shoot, boys, we got a chance. We got a
And there's
chance. Our
pressure on
defense is playing
Oregon.
well. Yeah. Yeah. Now all of a sudden they feel a little bit of something, and it gives you just a chance to believe that you can win the game. And who knows, in those weather conditions, I mean, who cares if you take a risk and you don't get it? But if you do and you achieve it, and you're still are struggling to score points, you never know what Oregon's offense could have done or mistakes it could have made to where Wisconsin could have found the end zone. And those conditions, you just don't know. So why not scratch and claw and take the risk? It doesn't make any sense.
It almost makes me feel like this rubs off on the defense again. Just because another strong performance for them, but the one thing that's missing is obviously, like we talk about every week, just kind of those game-changing, momentum-changing plays that can flip a game for you. Again, no turnovers, one pass breakup the entire night. The sacks were there, but again, no forced fumbles or anything like that. It almost feels like it resonates through the entire team when you don't, because these things, a lot of times I know players and coaches will say, it's a right place, right time type of deal. And, they happen when they happen. And when they do, they come in waves. But at some point you got to go just try and make something happen. And, here's a prime opportunity to get yourself, within, 4 points or even tie the game against one of the top teams in the country. And you essentially punt on it. It just feels like the turnover, takeaway, big play cancer that's in this program right now almost starts there.
Yeah, I know from a perspective of being on a defensive team where we haven't gotten a turnover in a long time. You're playing at a high level. You're doing all the things right. You're doing your job, but you're not taking that extra step of changing the game. And at this point, especially with the struggle of the offense, just doing your job at this point isn't good enough. It's not going to win you games. And I know Jimmy Leonard would start getting frustrated if we couldn't start taking the ball away. It would become
Mm-hmm.
a frustrating thing if we actually, we dropped a pick in the game, or if we had an opportunity to punch the ball out. That those were some of the things that frustrated him, because that's an opportunity to change the game. And I know that became the expectation of, if you drop a pick or if you miss an opportunity, that's actually, I mean, it's a cliche, but it's actually extremely frustrating and would be a huge deal in meetings for us, because that's the next step. I mean, you can't just start just holding them under 100 yards rushing or 100 yards passing, whatever it might be. You have to be able to take the ball away and change the game by giving your offense a chance to score, especially in these type of struggles.
I think we covered the Oregon game head to toe. Some news broke after we wrapped last Sunday. Athletic Director Chris McIntosh released a letter to the fans. I'm just going to let you react to it first. I didn't read the whole thing. I read the key parts because it felt like, one of those where you respond with a text message, that's great, or sorry that happened to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing because you basically knew what it was. But that message at this point in the season, what did you think when that dropped on Monday?
I was vocal about it on social media, but to me, this is how I look at that. You have a general of an army with his soldiers, right? And they're in the trenches. They're in the trenches fighting this war. They're trying to find a way to win games. They're fighting their way and scratching and clawing to battle through injuries to finish this season strong. Still have a chance to compete against the best teams in the country right now that's on our schedule. And then the general is looking the other way and talking to the public on what our next plans are for the next year. Don't worry about those guys over there. Let's worry about next year and our plans. Talking to the public. As a player, that would have pissed me off. Absolutely pissed me off, especially in the fact that you do a letter from your desk. Be a man and talk to the media. Be present. Answer these questions in person. I would love to hear him answer these questions in person to see what he would actually say. But no, he's going to hide behind his desk and approach the whole Luke Fickell situation, whether he's fired, not fired, what the plans are for the next season. You're going to do it from a letter, and your assistant creates this stupid graphic for you to put out for people to see. Like, that's ridiculous. And I think it's a slap in the face to the players, especially the seniors who do not have next year to go enjoy all the NIL and all the investment that you're talking about. They don't even benefit from it. So that's where I felt bad for the players, especially after coming off the Ohio State loss, and then now you're approaching, really tough game against Oregon, and you get that from your general and your leader. It would just completely just kind of just take the life out of your locker room if that's how you're seen from your athletic director. So that's my rant, but I would love for him to approach the media on this in person instead of do a stupid graphic like that. That pissed me off.
From a fan perspective, my only thought for them, and this was kind of my main takeaway on it, was just read the room, man. Nobody wanted to hear that at this point in time, especially after they were outscored 71-0 nothing in the last two games. That was the wrong time to send that message. And I highly doubt anybody read that thing, went over to uwbadgers.com and signed up for season tickets, or if you already had them, renewed them. I would be willing to bet it had the opposite effect with a lot of people. Now, if he had done it tomorrow after they hung in there with 21-7, yeah, it might. I don't think it would have the effect you hope it would have, but I don't think people would be as angry about it if he just wait. I think the timing of it was really bad. The other part of this is, when you have to give a head coach a vote of confidence, usually that's a sign that we're nearing the end on this. If you have to give them two, what does that mean to you?
I don't know how these players are going to react if Luke Fickell stays around. I mean, I don't know if these players want him to stay around. Some of them may, some of them may not. So if he does stay, how many guys are going to leave? Which means how much more NIL do you have to invest in new players to replace them, right? I mean, I don't know, and I think the time you talk about timing, right? With this whole thing about keeping him and investing in NIL, and I'm sure the fans didn't appreciate the letter as it is, but now McIntosh is just basically saying we need more money from y'all. We're going to invest in more NIL money, and I assume that how they're going to get that money is from the fans. So we need more money from y'all. That's not the way to go about things the right way. So I don't know what's going to happen with keeping Luke Fickell here, and you can have all these predictions and all these things of what and resources that he might have. But right now, if he stays, I don't think this program is going to be taken seriously for a long time, and that's what's unfortunate. And so, regardless of how much resources you give him, you still have to retain all the guys that have felt this awful and painful season in that locker room. You got to keep them too.
Again, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. We're still waiting for two games to be put together here where, we can somewhat confidently say it's turning around. They did play better after, Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, meets with them, meets with the team in person and tells them that Fickell is their coach through 2026. Now, none of the players, through 2025, none of the players went as far as to say the message was that Fickell was going to be staying next season as well, but I don't know that they would confirm that even if it were true. So we'll see what happens there. But we talked about this, before we wrap here. We talked about this off the air last week. We obviously didn't know that letter was coming. But my other takeaway from this is because we had heard about the big investment that they were going to put into the football program. My other takeaway was, and I'm not a big Paul Chris guy, just looking at it objectively, but this thing gets harder to swallow the deeper we get into the Luke Fickell era, especially after you're announcing a big financial commitment to, I guess, patch holes in a boat that's sinking, for lack of a better term. And my thought was, what did you do for Paul Christ when he was here. Now, obviously, NIL transfer portal wasn't really a thing during the back end of his tenure, but there are obviously other ways you can invest in the program to help him out. Recruiting budget, I know those numbers are very underreported. Wisconsin's got some avenues that allows them to cut costs. Regardless, their recruiting budget is not what it should be for a program of that stature. Their facilities definitely are not what they should be from a program at that of that stature. And at the time, there's all these facility arm races going on too. Particularly with the big SEC programs and the top of the Big Ten that were just kind of loading up there. And Wisconsin's not doing a heck of a lot. And here's a Wisconsin guy that probably could have used some help. And what did you do to him? You made an emotional decision to fire him because he had a different ideology about how to win in the changing college football landscape. Again, I was never a big Paul Chryst guy. Didn't have a problem with him or anything, but as far from a media perspective, his press conference, he was the type of guy that didn't want to give the media anything. That I know he was a lot different behind closed doors, and players loved him. So from my standpoint, he wasn't anything. He wasn't doing a lot for me. But like I said, it's getting harder to swallow. Seeing that they're going to dig themselves in deeper to the Luke Fickell era when you kick this guy's ass to the curb, who was highly successful here over what now seems like kind of a juvenile disagreement.
Yeah. The ridiculous part to me is how we've chose to invest in Luke Fickell and giving him every resource possible that we could give him at the university. Not to say that he has unlimited resources now, but the amount of investment that the university has given him relative to when Paul Chryst was one win away from going to the college football playoff in 2017 and averaged probably 9 to 10 win seasons from a certain year span. Why do we choose to wait till we fire him instead of just investing in the program while it's hot? I mean, if we invested this much in 2017 or after the 2017 season, there's no telling kind of where this program could have taken off from there. And we were still able to be somewhat consistent. We had that drop in 18, 19, we get back to the Rose Bowl, right? In 20, we drop off again, COVID, and 2021 is kind of stagnant. But imagine if the investment of what we've given Luke Fickell was going on after 2017 when we beat Miami in the Orange Bowl. There's no telling what exactly this program could look like now. And that's the frustrating part is we chose to invest in the stock at like the complete opposite time of when we should have.
Well, technically, you buy low, sell high. But I get your point because at
correct.
that point, yeah. But that's a point I had written down is in 2017 that should have been a signal of how close you were to pushing through the barrier and knocking down the door of the college football elite. I mean, they were one possession away from being undefeated and beating Ohio State in that Big Ten championship game. They weren't even one possession. They were potentially one bad call because there was an egregious missed pass interference call, and Wisconsin was heating up in that fourth quarter. I'm not saying they would have won the game, but they would have been in position to win it. And at that point, the way they were moving the ball, I would have rather been Wisconsin than Ohio State at that point in time if you get that call that you should have gotten. But that should have been the signal that, okay, we should be all in on this thing. And instead, you kind of stayed with the status quo. And I think a lot of what's happening now is, I think it's obvious Chris McIntosh and Luke Fickell are tied together. This is his hire. If you have to fire Luke Fickell, that's not going to look good on him. This was his big splash decision. He made an unprecedented move. He is going to rise or fall with whatever happens with Luke Fickell. He's not going to come out and say that. I never said that, but I can put two and two together on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And it goes back to what I was talking about last week, where we talked about whether or not you'd want to hire Jim Leonard just because you think you might look at him differently if this doesn't work out. You'd forget Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator, forget Jim Leonard, the All-American safety, and start remembering as a head coach, well, look what's happening to Chris McIntosh right now, because nobody gives a damn that he was a former player on a Rose Bowl team. All they're thinking about is what he's doing as an athletic director at this point.
That is a great point. That's a great point. Because even from a player's standpoint, when he was underneath Barry Alvarez, we did look at him that way, like, oh, former alum, played in some big games here, and played in the NFL. He's done everything in the journey that we wanted to do as a player, and he sat in our seat. And then it seemed like somewhere around there, it just flipped. It flipped to now we look at him as the athletic director and what he's doing to us as a program than that he was one of us. Nobody really sees him as one of us anymore. We just see everything that he's done that's affected us in the last 3-5 years. And that's sad, but you're right. I mean, you're spot on. It's a great example of a guy who has chosen to take a leadership role at this university, and that's the risk. I mean, if depending on how you succeed there and your choices, I mean, in that standpoint, that's how you are remembered.
We're going to go into the bye week now. Presumably, we will take the week off unless something big happens. Then I think we'll try and reconnect for another podcast here. But Wisconsin in 2 weeks takes on Washington. Before we go, from what you've seen from Washington, this looks like it's going to be another tough one. I mean, that quarterback runs as fast as damn near anybody I've ever seen maybe play the position in the Big Ten with few exceptions. If Wisconsin's going to get over this hump, and the hump right now is win a football game, I really like this Washington team. I don't think it happens next week, but from what you've seen, did you feel like the Badgers got a shot even at home? And it's tough to say there's a home field advantage anymore with the last 2 games have looked, because it hasn't been there.
If they can score some points, and okay, I don't know how.
Just say no.
I don't know how they are going to score points. I don't know what changes you necessarily have to make to be in position to at least score 17. But if that defensive front for us plays the way that they played last night, besides a few big plays, if you can eliminate those big plays, I mean, Oregon had a few just straight shots down the field that, in the run game that really hurt us, right? So if we can eliminate that and then play the way that they played, you can have a chance if you can score 17. But if you can't score 17, that's another problem, because this this Washington team is getting better every week. I mean, they looked really good yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me nervous, because this team is actually improving and getting better week by week.
Wisconsin, Washington in 2 weeks on November 8th. We'll see you guys after that one.